So since we've talked about what was going on in the Americas before the arrival of Columbus and many of the cultures that were in America before the arrival of the Spanish, I want to talk about what happened in Europe and Africa that led to this age of exploration. So going way back, you guys probably remember this from world history, or have heard of it before, the Crusades that took place in Europe. And what this does is Western Europe is now exposed to these new cultures in Asia Minor. So they now have trade networks that are being formed with um, Asia. And they also are exposed to new technologies, new sailing technologies, and they bring all this back. These crusaders that leave Western Europe to go to the Middle East all bring this new technology and new ideas back to their homes. And probably one of the most famous explorers is Marco Polo. He published his book, The Travels of Marco Polo, and he traveled all the way into the Far East, all the way in to modern day China. And his book opens up the idea in Europeans' minds that there's a vast trade network that is untapped into, and anybody that can figure out how to get those goods in Asia, those spices, and bring them back to Europe would be very wealthy, could make a lot of money. And so we see an explosion of trade between the Middle East and uh, the and China. And so they are bringing these trade networks together through the Silk Road, which you guys probably may remember from world history. And once those goods reach to the Middle East, then they spread throughout Europe and are bought by traders further west. But we also have a growth of ideas, and coming about a little bit later, building upon things like the Crusades and being exposed to cultures further east, we see a growth of ideas, and what this will be called is the Renaissance. And I'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But there is a new fascination with the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks, particularly their technology and architecture and art style. And so the Renaissance really means rebirth, and what it was a rebirth of Greek and classical thinking. So you see a lot of art that looks similar to what you would have seen in classical Greece, and you also see a more focus. People shift their focus from religion more to science and advancement. Religion is a very important part of European culture, but still there's a shift to look more to science to explain things. And through this advancement, nations become pretty powerful. So as these trade networks come together, the nations that can control these trade networks become very, very wealthy. And so we see these advancements in technology through that focus on science in the Renaissance. Things like the printing press that revolutionized the world. People could now print books, print writings much faster, so information could spread a lot faster. And then we have some serious advancements in sailing technology. So we have the astrolabe, which could determine your latitudes. So that could tell you where you were on the globe relative to the North and South Pole. Also, the magnetic compass is invented during this time, so that allows you to know what direction that you're going in relative to the magnetic fields of the Earth. And maps become more accurate as cartographers, fancy word for map makers, got better and more people explored. So more people are getting involved in sailing to try to reach those trade networks to make more money. Also, better ships. This is one of the main technologies that opens up Europe, or opens up sea travel from Europe to Asia. Because if you think about the globe, you have Europe and then Africa right below it. And if you have to sail all the way around to Africa to get to Asia, you have to go around the southern tip of Africa, and the waters there are very treacherous. And one of the problems that they had was they couldn't sail into the winds. You could only go whichever way the wind was blowing with old types of ships. But you guys may be familiar, if you know a little bit about sailing, you see that these ships here The ship pictured here has a triangular sail. It doesn't have this big square sails. It has these triangular sails that use kind of what's called lift, the same thing that an airplane wing uses. And you can sail closely into the wind. You can't ever sail directly into the wind, but you can sail closely into the wind. And so it allowed ships to become faster and more controllable when you're going through these tough waters. And so now shifting gears, we've talked about what was going on in Europe a little bit, but in Africa there were also things that were going on that are important to the colonial story of the United States. So African kingdoms sprouted up, especially in West Africa and the African interior, and the Portuguese will start trading with these West African tribes or kingdoms. And they become very wealthy. In the 1400s, they open up trade with Africa. So Ghana was a big trading empire. We also have Mali, that was a very powerful kingdom. And these two kingdoms will be important because as they start to gain more wealth from trading with Europe, there becomes conflict over who's going to become more powerful. And as this conflict arises, there's wars break out, and this will be kind of the catalyst, the beginning point of what will happen with the Portuguese and these West African kingdoms, and eventually the slave trade with America. And so I'm going to stop it here. I'll talk about the Portuguese and Spanish explorers in a different keynote. So if you have any questions, as always, just shoot me an email.